Every studio wants a card-carrying A-lister to headline their new project, because even though many believe the age of the movie star is over, audiences are far more likely to turn up for a film starring one of their faves, right? Nobody is a perfect fit for every part offered their way, and it takes a major absence of ego for them to realize they're better off passing on a project. But inspired by a recent Reddit thread on the subject, these 10 actors, all of them male curiously, ended up ruining movies through their sheer involvement. With that in mind, I'm Adam from What Culture, and here are 10 movie stars who ruined their own movies. Number 10. Will Smith, I, Robot. Alex Proyer's 2004 blockbuster I, Robot started off life as an original script from Jeff Vintar called Hardwired, an Agatha Christie-esque murder mystery in which an FBI agent investigates the murder of a roboticist, with the entire movie being set at the scene of the crime. The project passed through the hands of numerous actors, including Arnold Schwarzenegger and Denzel Washington, before Will Smith finally became attached. But with Smith's involvement, Fox began to envision the story as something much grander, and so writer Vintar was brought back to expand it into an action blockbuster worthy of a $120 million budget. Oscar-winning writer Akiva Goldsmith was also hired to polish the script for Smith. All of this ensuring that Vintar's modest original concept was basically tossed out for a broader, more schlocky sci-fi action tentpole. Simply, Smith's involvement mutated the entire project beyond its writer's original intent, because there was no way either Fox or Smith were going to sign off on a sci-fi chamber piece. While the end result isn't terrible, it is a bastardization of both the original concept and also Isaac Asimov's work that inspired it, to which it ultimately bears only the vaguest resemblance. Number 9. Kevin Costner, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves may have turned a hefty profit at the box office and given the world Bryan Adams' iconic tune, Everything I Do It For You, but as a Robin Hood movie, this thing is immediately sunk by the flagrant laziness of lead actor Kevin Costner. As was a major talking point at the time of the film's release, Costner bafflingly opted to play the Englishman protagonist with an ambiguously non-English accent, ensuring every word that came out of his mouth was difficult to take seriously. Apparently, Costner and director Kevin Reynolds argued over whether or not he should attempt an English accent, and seemingly decided that he shouldn't bother. But beyond that, it's impossible to watch this film without simply seeing Kevin Costner, the actor trying and failing to pass as Robin Hood. And this was all the more true if you watched it upon release, just a year removed from the Oscar-winning success of Costner's Dances with Wolves. Costner was so wrong for this part in every fiber of his being, and had one of the thousands of more appropriate actors replaced him, the film would have surely been received far more favorably. Number 8. Christian Bale, Terminator Salvation. Terminator fans were ecstatic when Christian Bale was hired to play John Connor in the series' fourth movie, Terminator Salvation, because it indicated a major seal of approval from one of the biggest stars on the planet. Yet, Salvation was ultimately received with indifference by critics and fans alike, failing to turn a profit and putting the movie franchise on ice for 6 years until the release of Terminator Genisys. The biggest problem, believe it or not, was Bale himself, who fundamentally changed the creative direction of the project when the filmmakers were lucky enough to have him come on board. Bale was originally offered the role of human-machine protagonist Marcus Wright, yet decided that he wanted to play franchise hero John Connor instead, who initially had a much smaller role in the script. And so the screenplay was rewritten to beef up Connor's role, with Jonathan Nolan, who contributed to the scripts of Bale's Batman movies, fleshing out Connor's heroic arc. This in turn led to Marcus's role being diluted and played instead by the less inspired choice of Sam Worthington, ensuring that the promising dramatic thread of a man learning that he's part machine felt rather undercooked. Had Bale played Marcus and the film remained centered around his exploration of what it means to be human, Terminator Salvation would have been considerably more interesting, as opposed to Bale playing a rather generically gruff riff on Connor. Number 7. Dwayne Johnson, Black Adam. It's genuinely shocking that it took Hollywood so long to make a superhero movie starring Dwayne Johnson, though Johnson admittedly spent the better part of a decade trying to get Black Adam made. Johnson, nothing if not a PR workhorse, repeatedly claimed that the blockbuster would change the hierarchy of power in the DC universe, but upon release, many fans of the character were miffed by one major creative choice. Ultimately, Johnson, who hasn't played an outright villain in years at this point, decided to rework Black Adam, a noted villain in the comics, into a more dubious anti-hero character who, by the film's end, unambiguously becomes a superhero. In the comics, Black Adam is Shazam's evil nemesis straight up. Yet because Johnson has to have it his own way and be the hero, he reshaped the core of the character in a manner that satisfied precisely nobody. To fans, it was a sacrilegious change, while to those new to the character, he was just a generic garden variety anti-hero. As a result, Black Adam released to a whiff of indifference from everyone, causing the speedy cancellation of a planned sequel before the DCEU was soft rebooted, with Johnson being unlikely to play the part ever again. Number 6. Roger Moore, A View to a Kill. A View to a Kill was Roger Moore's 7th and final outing as James Bond, and is perhaps cinema's all-time great example of an actor not knowing when to walk away from an iconic star-making role. Some critics already felt that Moore was too old in the previous film, Octopussy, and while shooting A View to a Kill, he turned 57 years of age. Despite only 2 years passing between these films, Moore had aged noticeably since Octopussy, which made him considerably less persuasive as both an action hero and a romantic lead. Action was never Moore's forte as 007, but here, director John Glenn was forced to awkwardly cut around Moore's stiff physicality to try and impress he could still go, while both his on-screen lovers, Tanya Roberts and Grace Jones, were over 20 years his junior. Awkward. Moore, ever a good sport, confessed in later years that he was only about 400 years too old to play Bond at this point, yet seemingly unable to turn down a final $7.5 million payday, he starred in one Bond film too many, and ensured his exit was a total laughingstock. Number 5. Sylvester Stallone, Judge Dredd. On paper, Sylvester Stallone actually seemed like a pretty great choice to play Judge Dredd. He certainly had the look down, but at the peak of his cinematic powers in the mid-90s, of course things wouldn't be that simple. First and foremost, Stallone hadn't actually heard of the iconic comic book character before being cast, and so it was a little surprise that he made basically no effort to respect the source material. For starters, he signed on to the movie believing it to be an action comedy, and so insisted upon rewrites to make it funnier, even as suffering director Danny Cannon was desperately trying to tap into the darker elements of the comic. But the single change that pissed off fans the most? Dredd spending most of the movie with his helmet off, despite never doing so in the comics. While it's never been confirmed if this was a change mandated by Stallone or the studio, it's clear that somebody high up the food chain refused to keep Stallone's chiseled mug under a helmet, which suggests he was wrong for the part all along. Thankfully, we at least eventually got 2012's hugely superior Dredd reboot, where star Carl Urban indeed stayed helmeted up for the entire film. Number 4. Brad Pitt, World War Z. There's no denying that adapting Max Brooks' beloved zombie novel World War Z into a blockbuster film was an extremely tricky task, given that the book is basically an anthology of short stories taking place in the wake of an undead apocalypse. The rights to the novel were acquired by Brad Pitt's production company Plan B in 2007, and though earlier drafts of the script centered the film around a UN employee interviewing survivors of the zombie war, as in the novel, this was eventually tossed out once Pitt was also confirmed to star. Because no movie studio was ever going to greenlight a zombie movie where Brad Pitt of all people travels the world and interviews survivors, it was of course retooled into a more conventional action horror movie. What started life as an adaptation that attempted to capture the spirit of the novel was transformed into a generic zombie film intended as a star vehicle for Pitt. It certainly worked to an extent, as reviews were solid and it turned a decent profit following extensive reshoots, but as an adaptation of Brooks' novel, it stinks. Number 3. John Wayne, The Conqueror. When it comes to movie stars derailing a project by refusing to appreciate how fundamentally miscast they are, there's surely no topping John Wayne's infamous 1956 historical epic, The Conqueror. While at the peak of his career, Wayne aggressively lobbied to play Genghis Khan in the film after reading Oscar Millard's script, and though director Dick Powell initially tried to talk Wayne out of it, he had no luck. He ultimately resigned himself. Who am I to turn down John Wayne? Given Wayne's immense stardom, it seemed like a project destined for success regardless. Yet, even the reviews of the period were harshly critical of Wayne's unconvincing attempt to pass as the Mongol warlord, namely donning yellowface, a Fu Manchu mustache, and sporting a dodgy accent. A Hollywood epic about Genghis Khan could have been great in theory, yet Wayne being completely blinkered to how inappropriate he was for the part ensured it never stood a chance. Number 2. Tom Cruise, The Mummy. Tom Cruise is arguably one of the few bona fide movie stars left whose name alone can genuinely open a film, and his hands-on approach to the movies he stars in has led to tremendous success in both the Mission Impossible franchise and the recent Top Gun Maverick. But back in 2017, Cruise faced the worst professional embarrassment of his career when his attempt to reboot The Mummy fell spectacularly flat. The film, designed as the beginning of Universal's Dark Universe, an MCU-esque interconnected world of movies also set to feature Johnny Depp, Javier Bardem, and Russell Crowe, was a critical dud and underperformed at the box office, quickly killing off Universal's lofty plans. A mere few weeks after its release, reports emerged that the production was a chaotic one, where Cruise had contractually guaranteed control over almost every aspect of the shoot. Some even claim that Cruise more or less directed large portions of the film himself, effectively shadow directing inexperienced blockbuster filmmaker Alex Kurtzman. Cruise also had the script rewritten to give himself a larger role in favor of the mummy, Sofia Boutella, and insisted upon the dubious subplot where Cruise's protagonist is brought back from the dead, whilst also having major input on the final cut. Numerous sources suggested that Cruise's desire to micromanage every aspect of the film, even down to its marketing, stifled the project and basically doomed it from the jump. Number 1. Kevin Spacey, Beyond the Sea. Kevin Spacey is a terrible human being, but a terrific actor, yet even he has his limits. In 2004, Spacey wrote, directed, produced, and starred in Beyond the Sea, a biopic of singer Bobby Darin. And though Spacey's commitment to the part is laudable, and his singing throughout is undeniably impressive, it's simply too much of a distraction that Spacey is far too old to fit all the requirements of the role. Spacey shot the film when he was 45 years old, which is a little odd given that Darin died at the age of 37, but not an egregious enough age gap to sink the movie on its own. But considering that Spacey plays Darin throughout the entire movie from his teens through to his 30s, with most of the film spent with Darin as a 20-something, it's laughably unconvincing for a middle-aged Spacey to play such a large age range. Curiously, Paramount dropped off financing the film when they told Spacey he was too old, and favoured Leonardo DiCaprio for the part instead. But Spacey refused to take the hint and ploughed ahead regardless. To the surprise of few, Beyond the Sea bombed at the box office and was deemed a vanity project by most critics, even though Spacey did receive a Golden Globe nomination, presumably due to his solid vocal performance. And as always, please do let us know what you think of our list in the comments section, and also let us know which big major movie do you think is worse off for its main star. If you want to follow me on social, I am at Strawn87 on Twitter and on Instagram. Come and say hello to me on there. Thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and until next time, take care.